And what I want to do is I want to take a look at it for a moment. I want to ask you a couple questions about it and see what we get. Okay. So the regions over here, Florida, Hawaii, California, Australia, Brazil, South Africa, and other. Okay, so these are the regions. The frequency of attacks in each region, and this is data from, I think, 2002 or something like that. So fairly accurate data, not just making all of this up. You know, there's a saying in statistics that 94% of all statistics are made up, and 67% of people believe them, whether they're accurate or not. Remember that. If you think about it again.
I think that's 6%.
You're 6%? Okay. All right, so the middle column there represents the number of attacks in each region. And then the last one is just going to be the proportion of attacks in each region out of the whole. If that goes on during a test, we'll just go outside. And if it's raining, bring an umbrella. It'll be all right. If I can't read your paper, you get a 0. It's all wet. That's why you need the umbrella. Uh, 070, 080. 261. All right. So here we have an example of some data that was collected. This data has actually been, the nice thing about this data is it's already been sort of analyzed a little bit. It's been grouped together and summarized a little bit nicely for us. A couple of things that I can ask about this. Okay, first thing I can ask about this is, what is the variable of interest in this particular table? What's the variable that we're looking at?
Number of shark attacks.
Be careful what I say.
So exactly that's recorded.
No.
Area?
In this particular problem, the actual variable of interest is region. The region is actually what we're analyzing. Okay? That's what each one of these categories is giving us. Okay? So region here is our variable. Now, if that's our variable, what type of variable is this? Quantitative, categorical? Hopefully, everyone will agree this is in fact a categorical variable. Okay? All of the attacks fit into one of those individual categories. And I can put each attack into one of those categories. Those categories don't overlap, and they're all distinct. So this is in fact a categorical variable. Okay. This kind of display, this is what is referred to as a frequency table. These are handy in displaying information because they give us a nice way of looking at the data without having to see where each individual attack occurred. Okay. If you were to have been the person out there collecting this data, what you would be doing is you'd be looking up all the shark attacks that occurred in the world that particular year, and you'd be finding where they occurred. So you might have Florida, Hawaii, California, Hawaii, Florida. Those are the kind of responses you're getting from this data. But the nice thing is this has already been summarized nicely for us. Someone went out, collected all the data, put it in a table, displayed the table for us. This is a whole lot better to look at than just a bunch of words that describe where each attack was, right? Would you rather look at this, or would you rather look at 979 different words that say where the attack occurred? If you're going to analyze this, which would you prefer? Personally, I prefer this. Yeah. You may not, and that's fine. But this is how I would prefer to get my data. Here's another collection of data. Hopefully this turns on well. identified data. That's a key fact, and I will stop with that part. All right. Next thing I want to talk about. Ways of summarizing data. How can I summarize data? Well, again, there's a couple of things that we have to do. We have to identify what kind of data do I have. The data that's coming up here on the screen represents the number of touchdowns that each of the 119 different NCAA Division I schools scored in 2008. Fox, can you hit that light? Or actually, Andy, can you hit that light? I don't know how late this is at. Again, with the big room structure, it's sometimes hard to see. All right, so here is our data. Again, number of touchdowns scored by each of the 119 teams in the NCAA Division I. Okay. What kind of data is this? Quantitative, categorical. This is in fact quantitative data. Okay. Each value here has a measurable difference between every other value. Okay. So quantitative data. All right. Now, here's the data. How can I summarize this data? What can I do? I mean, here's your data. Do you want to look at this? Is there some other way that you'd rather summarize it so that if you were to present it to someone else, they could quickly and easily see the kind of things that you want them to see? How would you go about summarizing it? So, one thing that I heard, one thing you can look at. One thing we can look at, we can look at the average. Now, I'm going to put a star next to that one, and we'll come back to that. What else can we look at? How else can I summarize this data?
Range.
What's that?
Like the range between the lowest and the highest.
Okay, so I can look at the range of the data. What else? What is sort of difficult about looking at this data the way it is right now?
Which team?
What's that?
So you don't know which team did what?
True, we don't know which team does what, and sometimes that's important. Sometimes that's a key factor that we want to keep. We don't want to necessarily associate each data point to its original source. So sometimes the anonymous is important. But what else? What else do you see or do you not see here? Again, this is all the data.
They're all random, not in order.
Okay, so they're all randomized, there's no order, there's no structure to what I'm looking at here, it's just raw data. It's just a bunch of numbers on a screen, lots of them. You know, I don't know about you, I have a hard time sort of figuring out what I'm supposed to see when all of this data is just thrown up here on the screen. I don't have a good way of visualizing what's going on here. Okay? So, let's in some way arrange the data. And one of the easiest things to do there is to create, like we had earlier, a frequency table. The frequency table is going to give me a chance to see where is my data? How much data is in each individual area? Another problem I have here, are there any patterns going on? Are there patterns in this data? I mean, is there a certain number of touchdowns that most teams score? Is there a range of touchdowns that the majority of teams sort of fall into that category? Okay. So I'd like to be able to visualize the data, maybe with some graphs. How can I visualize this data with graphs? Let's take a look at some things we can do with this.